So, yesterday, I don't know if did many of you catch part one of Brian's yesterday? I'm seeing some, yeah, good. He wasn't very nice, was he, about where marketing spend's going to go. It's data-led, and we can't blame him for just being an American, because he actually knows what he's talking about, despite the accent.
And the Canadian-British passport.
Well, the Canadian thing. We won't go back there again. So, you saw Peter. I mean, how does that not shift the needle? That's why I just don't understand that. Like, you see something like that, it's very powerful. Why doesn't that shift marketers' opinion?
I didn't get a chance to ask him about his studies on radio and how ridiculously effective radio is.
He mentioned radio.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And what about direct mail?
He didn't mention direct mail.
My only point is that effectiveness is nice. It's order qualifier, like for why you spend money.
I'd say it's nice, it's how your brands grow, how they have a price premium. It's more than nice.
Who says anyone needs a brand? Now let me clarify.
Yeah.
I think every brand owner wishes that they continue to have a brand, but the short-term pressures to, now again, we're talking about legacy incumbent marketers.
Loads of them.
Well, yeah, but they want to sustain their brands for sure. But they have shorter term pressures around performance.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And if anything, television has a branding problem.
Yeah.
Television's branding problem is that it's not branded, it's not perceived as driving performance, independent of whether it does or not, right? And so that means that marketers will shift spending to places where they perceive performance. Can television solve its branding problem of being a brand builder, not a performance builder? How meta is that, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the bigger issue, right? Again, when we're talking about the future of television, what really, really matters, it's from the vantage point of the overall economy. It's this Joseph Schumpeter concept of creative destruction, right?
This is what we're actually going to talk about, isn't it? This is about why you believe TV will actually struggle to grow as a business, commercial broadcasters.
This is far more important.
We're talking about traditional sort of broadcasting brands. You think they're in a lot of trouble.
To be clear, when we're talking about creative destruction, we're not talking about the end of J. Walter Thompson.
No.
Right, we're talking about, right, we understand the economic concept. New businesses evolve to replace those which come before. And if I may, the inevitability is basically a marketer that came into existence in the year 1990 has a very different marketing mix than one that came into existence in the year 1980. And in 2010, you use the term online-born brands, right?
Yeah.
The reality is that their media mixes are inevitably different because their businesses are fundamentally different. And if I may, to make a point, digital advertising will bury television as it's been historically defined.
Yeah. Did you have to do that?
Well, you get the illusion, right?
Yeah, okay, I do.
Okay.
I would have got it had you said it as well, all right? I'm not as stupid as I look. All right, so creative destruction, I'm going to explain it in the way, and you're just going to say it's right. So if you think about McDonald's, they were built on telly. A lot of these brands had spent 89% of their money on brands, right? On TV to build their brand. 90% of their spend would have gone to TV. Good God. Today, that's probably 50. We saw with Peter Field, 50 seems like the apex. What you're saying is that the new companies coming up are not replacing that loss.
DoorDash comes into existence as part of the overall restaurant sector, let's call it. And their media mix is not 90 or 50%, but more like 10%.
So they won't replace that spend that has been lost and
exactly
add on the viewership and demographic issues that telly has.
Doesn't help. And this is the bigger point, that if you're playing in the world that we call television today, you've got to recognize that the changes in economies around the world will overwhelm these other issues.
Why do you call that creative destruction?
Well, it's Joseph Schumpeter. It's a concept like in economic theory. Like it explains how economies evolve.
Yeah.
And I think that not enough people understand or appreciate this idea. And the reality is that the like-for-like advertiser can hold steady with their spend with an incremental shift away from television, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about yesterday. It's mostly incremental, maybe gets a little more aggressive with packaged goods. But that's far less important than if you look at the list of the largest advertisers in 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020, look at how that evolution goes. The advertisers that exist today as the top 100 advertisers, relatively few of them existed 20 years ago. And their media mixes are different. Play this out over a decade, right? You can model out what this looks like And you can, that's where I get to the inevitability.
Brands will change their approach, though, to marketing. Like they will, they do flip and flop between going performance, going brands. So it's not like a linear thing.
I think now the pressure on short-term focus didn't really exist. The ability to claim credit for performance did not exist like it does now. Again, to be clear, I'm as skeptical as anyone of the claims of performance that a digital platform may provide, but it doesn't matter. It is persuasive enough to the typical marketer.
Massage the data and it will tell you what you want it to tell you, exactly. So how about broadcasters? Actually, we've heard it quite a bit. We heard it from Kate yesterday. They're actually attracting a lot of new spenders to TV in the region. It's 50 million, I think, on ITV. I could have completely balls up that stat, but something around like that. What about that? Is that not making up the shortfall?
So who remembers Chia Pets? Does that exist in the UK?
Who?
Chia Pets. Chia. Okay, you know.
You can start singing. Yeah.
Direct response brands have always existed, right? And there's always room.
We're talking about like estate agents, so they're not necessarily just direct response brands.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, there's always going to be some performance-based brands and online-born brands who will recognize, to be clear, television is incredibly impactful, as are other media, right? And there will be some who spend money on television. I'm just saying it's a small share. It's not going to move the needle because the perception of what drives performance, the orientation of a business, the closed-loop nature of digital platforms just overwhelms it. Here's a fun data point to think about. Based on US data, I would love to see other countries' data if it exists. The IRS produces some really useful data to make this analysis. A typical retailer allocates something like 1% of their total turnover to advertising. E-commerce-based retailers spend about 4% of their revenue on advertising. What has to happen, if let's just say the typical retailer allocates, say, 50% of spend to TV, then you can do the math. The e-commerce-based retailer has to allocate more than 12.5% to television. I don't think it's going to be that high. It's going to be a large number, right? But it won't be enough to replace the loss. Okay. And that's the sort of trend that's going to be impossible to overcome. And all I'm saying is, that doesn't mean that today's TV networks die. I am saying if they don't recognize this change, they will. Yeah. And I'm saying that means a couple things. Focus on subscriptions. Consumers will pay.
So this is how do they reverse this? Let's you turn it into a positive, if you can.
First of all, focus away from advertising. That's the first thing. Consumers will have a high tolerance for paying, higher than I think is widely understood, because the value that television produces as a form of entertainment is really, really high. And I don't think that that TV network owners appreciate that enough. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when it comes to advertising, we started talking about this yesterday, the idea of becoming a platform. I think there is an opportunity for today's TV networks to think in terms of how can they be perceived to be selling outcomes. For example, partnering with a retailer, maybe you let the retailer sell all your media. I'm not saying that's the right answer in all cases, but maybe you provide them with a lot of inventory because they can credibly sell performance, rightly or wrongly. They have the access to the marketer's wallet in a way that a TV network does not and will not. Yeah. That could be another pathway. But becoming a platform, selling performance and focusing on performance, I think is a credible pathway. Yes, it means that brands don't grow and thrive as they used to. And, well, it is what it is.
This is exactly the opposite of what Peter Field was just suggesting.
I'm not saying what they should do. And by the way, everything I'm saying is what can happen, could happen, can produce growth. The reality is that if you focus on willful optimism, that's nice. Yeah. Doesn't mean you're actually going to have a growing business.
No, fair enough. What about if TV focus hugely on like content drives audiences? Does it not? Like we've seen it with the chart, saw it with Richard Braun.
And you can get people to pay for it too.
Yeah. Is that not, if they invest heavily there and they bring back audiences in a large way, wouldn't that bring their fortunes back?
Change in demand does not cause change in supply, and change in supply does not cause change in demand. Just because you change the nature of the supply of inventory does not do anything to the change in demand. I think people conflate these two things, right? Please separate them. Whenever you hear people talk about if we just produce more audience, what does that have to do with nature of demand? I've just pointed out.
This is the subjective battle that you think that TV's.
That's not a subjective battle. That's more about like they're independent variables, right? People assume if you grow your supply, you will necessarily grow demand. That's not true in most industries. Why should it be true in television?
Okay, I'm almost too tired to try and understand that fully. I'm going to just assume that my audience are way smarter than me. What about Netflix moving to ads? You got Amazon, you got a lot more inventory coming from the AVOD.
Yep.
They're going to be stealing share, or is this going to be growing?
Yep, share. Now, to be clear, Amazon...
Surely they're going to be growing the pie a bit, taking money from...
Not really. I think that it's very plausible.
This is cheery, isn't it? Yeah.
Disappointing. Since 1974. Come on.
Yeah.
No, but I do think that it is interesting, and this hasn't played out yet quite. How much incremental demand can Amazon in particular bring because they are able to capture those retail budgets? I don't think that's how they're going to go to market right away, but it's absolutely plausible. Like there is incremental spending coming from, in the US, Walmart, I think, and Paramount. Didn't they just not announce something with Peacock as well? I think that they will be able to bring some of the retail money into what we'll call television. What are the economics for the sellers of TV? I don't know.
Yeah.
And how much is incremental? That's very plausible. Retail media is where all the focus is right now, right? And I think, especially for packaged goods, I think that there can be some incremental through that pathway.
Yeah.
For the most part, though, I think the way that Amazon Prime is going to capture a TV budget, that's just share shift, nothing more than that.
So when you hear TV companies say it's a challenging market, how do you feel about that? Because
they're mistaken if they're talking about the overall ad market. They're not mistaken if they're talking about television. But I think that it's very common. I wrote
the overall ad market is, in your view,
very healthy.
It's very healthy. It's up.
Very healthy. This is the thing. And I wrote this analysis. It's still up on my Substack site, madisonwall.substack.com, free till the end of the month.
So where's all the money going, by the way?
Meta, Google,
so it's
Amazon,
going to the platforms.
Pinterest, TikTok.
Yeah. Okay. So. Sorry, I interrupted you there. You were doing a nice little plug.
No, I was just making a point that you can see a chart, and you do the math yourself. If you lay out the growth rates, do it at the EMEA level, not at, like nobody can really know with any accuracy what the right number is for the UK alone, for Italy alone, for Germany alone, right? It's really hard. I mean, to be clear, Group M does great work, Magnet does great work, and those are good estimates, and I would run with those, but what I'm saying is any one of us here can look at Meta's public filings, Google's public filings, you can make some assumptions and you basically get to an EMEA number, compare that growth rate for those two companies, and then look at Media for Europe and RTL, 9TV, M6, et cetera, right? Yeah. And it's unambiguous. Yeah. Unambiguous. The ad market is growing in Europe. So when someone says, if you're a large seller of traditional TV advertising, and you say, if you say that the TV market is challenging, that's correct. If you say the ad market is challenging, that is incorrect.
Okay, so you mentioned them, like lots of small broadcasters represented here as well, throughout Europe, throughout the world actually. How can they become a line item? Like it sounds like a ridiculous sort of ask for a smaller broadcaster. So what do they do? Do they collaborate? How do they do it? They become global? Like, how do they actually achieve that?
I was thinking this, you know, I thought about it more through the lens of certainly the American companies, where you can imagine a world where some of the platforms realize that their growth rates, like the mid-sized guys, the Reddits, the Snaps, the Pinterests, their growth prospects are also going to be challenged in the not too distant future. And at some point they'll realize that. Now, is partnership the right pathway? That's easier, still difficult. But do you partner with the TV networks and with those platforms? Kind of easier to imagine in an American context, harder to imagine at a regional, if you're in Belgium, like how do you do that just in Belgium? Maybe you could, maybe not. But also then it occurred to me, again, I know Channel 4 has its challenges here, and I'm not saying this could work here. I'm not pretending to say this could work. But imagine a retailer saying, hey, we're going to create a big retail media network and we can sell every piece of inventory we can get. Hey, why don't we sell your TV inventory? I'm not saying that that's the answer to what's going on there.
You don't seem to have many of the answers, to be honest.
I have
a lot of problems.
I have,
Yeah.
again, I focus more, no, the US, I'm saying,
yeah, no, I
here
know,
are the
I
three
know.
answers for the US-based guys.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I haven't thought through the European-specific solution.
Okay, next year you're going to think through those solutions, and that's what we're going to hear about. I hope he's given you plenty of food for thought. He's come all the way here from Portland. This is his second presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a massive hand for...
Thank you, everyone.